when you think about history, I mean, the really big textbook stuff, it's so easy to just see the statues.
Right. We calcify it. We turn these complex, real human beings into symbols.
Yeah, into symbols. And it makes them easier to revere, sure, but maybe harder to actually understand.
Much harder.
And today we are taking perhaps the biggest symbol in American civil rights history, Martin Luther King Jr., and we're going to try to, well, to chip away at that marble. We want to find the person.
And to do that, we're not just going to recite the greatest hits.
Yeah.
We're going to walk through a very specific timeline of his life. We've got a whole stack of sources here, census records, personal photographs, his own writings, that trace his journey from a kid in Atlanta to a Nobel laureate.
And looking through this, the mission for this deep dive became really clear: to understand the evolution. Because you don't just wake up one day and decide to lead the March on Washington. You're built into that person.
Exactly. Piece by piece, experience by experience. And there are details in these early records that are, I mean, genuinely surprising. Things that don't fit the standard statue narrative we all know.
Okay, like the name. That's the first thing that jumped out at me. We're starting at the very beginning, January 15th, 1929. A child is born at 501 Auburn Avenue in Atlanta.
Which is a historic site now.
Right.
The house is still standing.
Right. But I'm looking at the birth details here, and the baby isn't named Martin. He's named Michael.
Michael King Jr., yes. Named after his father, who was also Michael King at the time.
Michael. So where does Martin come from? Was that a nickname or?
No, it was much more deliberate than that. It's a fascinating pivot right at the start of his story. His father, the senior pastor, he travels to Germany. And while he's there, he becomes deeply inspired by the Protestant reformer, Martin Luther.
The guy who nailed the theses to the church door.
That's the one. He was so moved by that history of challenging the status quo that a few years later, he decides to change his own name to Martin Luther King. And he changes his son's name, too.
Wow. So that's such a conscious choice, an intentional reinvention. It's almost like saying, this is who we choose to be.
It sets a tone of intentionality that really follows him for the rest of his life. But while they could choose their names, they couldn't choose their environment.
Yeah, let's talk about the reality, because we tend to gloss over the childhood part of historical figures. But the notes here, from around 1935 to 44, they show that segregation wasn't just a political idea for him.
No, it was his daily reality. There's a specific note in the timeline about him losing his white friends, just neighborhood kids he played with. And then once they hit school age, the parents step in.
And he couldn't play with them anymore.
Simply because he was black.
And the source puts his reaction so bluntly, it just says he did not like this. It's such an understatement, isn't it?
It is. But you can feel the confusion of a kid who just wants to play, and the world is suddenly building these invisible walls.
In that frustration, it seems like it acted as, I don't know, rocket fuel for his education.
Rocket fuel is a good way to put it. He was moving at a pace that is, well, it's hard to comprehend today.
I mean, listen to this trajectory. He goes through a few different schools. That sounds normal. But then the timeline just throws this massive curveball. He takes the entrance exam for Morehouse College.
A very prestigious, historically black men's college, a serious place.
And he passes. But the thing is, he hasn't actually graduated from high school yet.
That's right.
He just skips it. Skips the whole formality. No cap and gown, straight to college.
It speaks to a profound intellectual maturity. I mean, he was 15 years old.
15. When I was 15, I was trying to figure out how to parallel park. He's navigating a college campus.
And he's not just attending, he's thriving. And then the timeline shows him entering the ministry incredibly early, too.
Okay, yeah, let's look at that. February 1948, he's ordained as a minister. If you do the math, he's just 19.
19 years old.
So at 19, he's ordained. He's the assistant pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, working with his dad.
Which is a heavy mantle for a teenager. I mean, that's a historic pulpit.
And then in June of that same year, 1948, he graduates from Morehouse with a BA in sociology.
And that degree is important. I want to pause on that word. Sociology.
Why does that stand out?
Because it tells you he wasn't just studying scripture. He was studying the structure of society, how groups work, how institutions function. So by 19, he has the spiritual leadership from the church and this analytical framework from the university.
You can see the two halves of his leadership coming together right there.
Right. And he immediately decides to sharpen that toolkit even further. September 48, he heads north to Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania.
And our notes just say he was an excellent student.
Which is not a huge surprise at this point.
No, but it emphasizes that this is where the theory solidifies. He's reading Gandhi, he's reading detailed theology, he's building the intellectual engine for the movement.
But life isn't just books and sermons.
Right. We have to humanize him. Let's talk about June 18th, 1953.
Yes. Marion, Alabama. The wedding.
He marries Coretta Scott. And this is one of those details that made me smile. She was a former music student, very accomplished. And the source mentions that when she first met him, she wasn't so sure.
She was a little hesitant about dating a minister.
Which is fantastic. It makes him feel so real. You know, oh, a minister, I don't know. It reminds you, he had to be charming. He was a guy trying to get a date.
He won her over, obviously.
Hmm.
And that partnership, it becomes the bedrock for everything that follows. Because after the wedding, the timeline it shifts gears violently.
Yeah.
From preparation to action.
It really does. 1954, they moved to Montgomery, Alabama. King becomes a pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And this is where history starts to grab the wheel. We're coming up on 1955.
The Montgomery bus boycott.
So everyone knows Rosa Parks. She refuses to give up her seat. She's arrested. That's the spark. But what happens next in the organizational notes is what's really key here. The community forms the Montgomery Improvement Association, and they need a president.
Someone to lead what's going to be a huge, difficult fight.
And who do they pick? They pick the new guy in town, Martin Luther King Jr. He is 26 years old.
26. Just pause on that for a second.
It's terrifying. He's tasked with leading this massive citywide economic boycott against a hostile system.
Most people at 26 are just figuring out their careers. He's trying to dismantle a legal system.
And it wasn't just professional pressure, it was danger. Real danger. Which brings us to January 30th, 1960.
This is a pivotal moment. The test by fire.
So King is speaking at a church. While he's on the pulpit, his house is bombed.
His family home. His wife and infant child were inside.
It was bombed by whites who were angry about the boycott, and word spreads fast. An angry crowd of African Americans gathers at his destroyed home. They are ready to retaliate.
You can just imagine the tension. The whole city could have gone up in flames right there.
This is the moment. This is where the theory of nonviolence has to actually work. It's not a paper from seminary anymore, so what does he do?
He stands on his shattered porch amidst the rubble, and he tells them to go home.
He tells them to go home.
Yes. He urges them not to respond with violence. He says they have to meet hate with love. He diffuses a mob that had every right to be furious.
That's almost superhuman restraint.
It's the difference between having a philosophy and living it. It's one thing to preach nonviolence when things are calm. It's another thing entirely when your own front porch is covered in glass.
If he was ever going to break, that was the moment.
Exactly. And because he didn't, the movement held the moral high ground. After that, he resigns from Dexter Avenue and moves back to Atlanta to direct the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
This feels like a level up. He's going from a local pastor to the head of a national organization.
He's taken the fight to a national scale. His eyes are on federal laws now.
Which brings us to the moment everyone has seen. April 28th, 1963. The March on Washington.
The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That full title is important.
Why is that?
Because we often forget the jobs part. This was about economic rights just as much as civil rights.
And on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, looking out over that massive crowd, he gives the I Have a Dream speech.
And you just have to connect that back to the boy named Michael, who couldn't play with his friends. Now he's standing in front of Abraham Lincoln, rewriting the social contract for the entire country.
And the world noticed. December 10th, 1964, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize.
And he was praised specifically for his call to peaceful resistance. Again, that consistency. From the bombed porch to the Nobel stage, the message never wavered.
I want to spend a second on the content of that message. We have a few key quotes here, and I think they explain why he was so effective.
Right. Take this one. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
That's the famous one. But what is he really saying there?
He's describing an interconnected system. He's saying this isn't just a Southern problem or a black problem. If justice fails in Alabama, the integrity of the whole system is compromised, even in New York. We're all caught in what he called an inescapable network of mutuality.
It forces you to care, even if it's not in your backyard. Then there's this one, which I find even more challenging. The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people.
Oof. That's a direct challenge to anyone who considers themselves a moderate. The person who says, well, I'm not the one planting the bomb, I'm a good person.
I'm just minding my own business.
And King's argument is that silence is complicity. That if you see it and say nothing, you are part of the equation that lets it continue. He He stripped away the comfort of neutrality.
It's heavy. It demands action. And tragically, that voice was met with the ultimate violence.
Yes, April 4th, 1968.
Memphis, Tennessee. He's on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. He's assassinated by James Earl Ray.
He was only 39 years old.
That age always gets me. 39. He had already changed the world before he hit 40.
And the immediate aftermath of his death is so heartbreaking because of the contrast. Remember the bombed porch?
How he calmed the crowd.
Right. When he was alive, he was like a dam, channeling all that anger into something constructive. When he was killed, the dam broke.
The sources say riots broke out in over 100 U.S. cities. 20,000 people arrested.
It just shows you how much anger was there just under the surface and how unique his leadership was in containing it.
But the story doesn't end there. We have one more date on our timeline, November 2, 1986.
The establishment of the national holiday.
And here's a piece of trivia I did not know. The source says he is one of only 2 people to have their own U.S. federal holiday by name.
That's right. The other one is Christopher Columbus.
That's a very short list. But what I love about the MLK holiday is that it was designed with a specific purpose. It's this idea of the day of service.
The day on, not a day off.
Exactly. It's not just for mattress sales. It's meant to be a continuation of his work, an invitation to serve your community.
Which brings us back to one of his most famous questions.
Yes. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?
It's a haunting question, in a way. It's not, what did you achieve? It's, what are you doing for others? It just shifts the whole metric of a successful life.
So when you look at this whole timeline, from Michael King Jr. to the 19-year-old minister to the Nobel winner, what's the big takeaway for you?
For me, it's the evolution of courage. We look at the icon and think he was born fearless. But the timeline shows a young man constantly stepping up to challenges that were bigger than him.
He kept leveling up.
He kept leveling up. He didn't just pastor a church. He led a boycott. He didn't retaliate when his house was bombed. He preached peace to a mob. He constantly chose the harder, higher path.
That's a great way to put it. He wasn't a statue. He was a person who just kept making the brave choice over and over until it changed the world.
Precisely. And that's a version of history that's much more useful to us than just admiring a monument.
Well, that is our deep dive on the evolution of a king. We hope you learned something new about the man behind the holiday.
And as you go about your week, maybe keep that question handy.
What are you doing for others? It's a good one to chew on. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.